Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is, wow, nice. You do not talk about Fight Club.
If you are of a certain age, of course, you'd be familiar with the movie Fight Club. And one of the golden rules of Fight Club is you don't talk about it. Everybody knows it's there, but you actually don't talk about it. The same can be said about enemies lists. And of course, Lauren Gunter and Laurie Goldstein and I, we've been at this for a while, so we probably are on a few enemies lists, but it's not something you discuss. And so that is a golden rule that the spokesperson for the Bank of Canada broke very quickly, not realizing that he was on a hot mic. Lauren Gunter, the Blacklocks reporter, who we run a lot of their great reports that come out of Parliament Hill because they have an eye on what's going on up there. They were on a call with the Bank of Canada, one of their usual media roundtables, and the spokesperson, whose name is Paul Bedicher, I probably mispronounced that, but nonetheless, Lauren caught on a hot mic saying he doesn't want to speak to certain types of reporters from certain media outlets.
There's a couple people here who I am absolutely, check the list to make sure who's listening, absolutely not keen to give questions to. I do not want to be in a situation where we're allowing Blacklocks to be asking us. Yeah, that's about where we're at.
And Blacklocks was on the line. So to my notion of, not talking about Fight Club, not talking about your enemies lists, how ridiculous is this?
Oh, this is a big gaffe, as we've talked about before, by a politicized guy. He's a bureaucrat. He's not a political flunky. He's not a politician himself, but he is in a highly politicized area with the Bank of Canada, talking about their policy, which impacts an awful lot of Canadians and particularly impacts interest rates and share prices. So when the Bank of Canada speaks, it has a real impact on anybody who has shares through their RSP in the banks or in major Canadian corporations. So they really have to be very, very careful. And for somebody from the Bank of Canada to admit that they have a blacklist of reporters they won't talk to, and more importantly, they invite other reporters to phone them so that they can give them details on how to report on the Bank of Canada.
Ask people, don't admit people, please. Let me do all the admitting, okay? Because I know who's who.
It's just, we all know this sort of thing goes on. We all know that there are lots of reporters who have cozy relationships with the Liberal government. And, if you will report on our new policy favorably, we'll give you some more details than we give anyone else. But this idea of a blacklist is so forbidden to discuss in political circles that it really is amazing that this came out.
Laurie, that whole notion of using your inside voice, well, again, how many times does someone need to be caught on a mic not to recognize the reality? But I suspect, you, as I said, you've covered politics for a long time. You've made many of the comfortable uncomfortable. Perhaps your face has graced the back of a dartboard here or there in the hallowed halls of various levels of government. But nonetheless, there could be, cozy relationships. We could be perceived as having cozy relationships with any conservative government. But again, there are those ties that media and the government do have. But again, it's not explicit, it's implicit.
Yeah. In one sense, the pandemic is the best thing that's happened to the Trudeau government, because now they don't have to have reporters in a scrum. You remember for the first year when Trudeau would come outside the cottage and he would talk and then you'd get a couple questions, and they'd just been handed a huge financial thing. So they're not ready to ask questions. The handlers choose the questions. We know that certain people are avoided. Blacklocks they do stuff in Ottawa nobody else does. They don't do politics in that. They do documents. They go through government documents. They cover committee meetings that nobody else does. Publishers, Holly Doan, these are classic gumshoe journalists.
Yes.
And government doesn't like that. They can't be fooled. They can't be bought. They can't be enticed with, well, we'll give you the story that you will announce today. They don't care. That's why the Bank of Canada doesn't like them. It's why the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation doesn't like them. They're doing their job. As Lauren, you point out, we all know this goes on, but for somebody to actually say it on the line with reporters, like, how stupid could you be? Now, the final thing, though, is that I go back to my years, and I covered mostly provincial politics. And to me, the whole freedom of information thing, while well-intended, backfired. It's become freedom from information. When I used to report at Queen's Park decades ago, you would get on the phone. You wouldn't get an email response to a question. The person would get on the phone, and ministers did this, and deputy ministers did this, and senior staff did this. They knew that was part of their job. If I'm going at them at something, they want to get the government's point of view on. And I would always include their argument, even when it was surrounded by a column where I said they was wrong. And when you do that with competent people, you get access, because all they want are those few paragraphs where you give their, I used to have, senior political aides, when they knew something was going wrong in their ministry, call me, because they wanted to get it out. The Ontario Civil Service was not partisan. They were good. They did whatever they worked with Bill Davis. They worked with David Peterson. They worked with Bob Ray. These were competent, smart people. And now we have these idiots. And also it's the arrogance. Think of the arrogance, of this worm deciding, oh, we don't want Blacklocks, but I like this guy. So I'll tell him what a worm. And he's the symbol of what's collapsed in public service. That's the symbol.
And of course, there will be zero consequences for him. Go ahead, Lauren.
No, when you do this, when you start to look at your job in the public service in a partisan or ideological way, the way that the Bank of Canada spokesperson has, that leads, it's on the same continuity of thought about, well, now we have to control the messages that are on social media, and we have to say that this is misinformation, and we have to protect the public from getting a broad spectrum of all views, because that's just not how it works. It's too difficult for the government. That's their number one priority. It saves the government embarrassment. But it's also the idea that we the unwashed masses, are too stupid to see through all the baffle gab and decide for ourselves what's true and what isn't. I would much rather have a large uninformed rally of anti-vaxxers than to have the CRTC placed in charge of deciding what is appropriate on the internet and what is not. There are ways of handling the misinformation that the anti-vaxxers blow up into the whole idea that we're being enslaved by the state if we take the vaccine, which is nuts. But I would much rather have that than have the CRTC with a bunch of liberal appointees, or in the case when we ever get another conservative government, conservative appointees, deciding what should and shouldn't be on the internet. That's much more dangerous. And I think that is a direct outgrowth of the mindset Laurie's talking about with these civil servants.
Political gaffes, we love them. The latest comes from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, which was a beautiful photo and meant to just, tug at the heartstrings, but it's really going to cost him potentially a lot of money. Have a look. Lauren Gunter, there's a notion of NDP leaders, they're down to earth and they're for the people, but a $1,900 rocker? Really?
Well, and how did he not know that you can't take a good from a commercial company and boast about it on Instagram in return for getting it free? Like the ethics in that, it's not, the parliamentary ethics rules are kind of puzzling at times. This isn't one of those times. This is very obvious. He should never have done it. And surprises me that he was that clueless.
Laurie, this is the NDP leader that tools around in sports cars, fancy sports cars, wears $10,000 watches and bespoke clothes. Is he offside with his base? Do they care?
Well, look, the NDP has always had this division between the academics, you know, and a lot of people who would look at that and just shrug. But then it ostensibly appeals to working people, and working people paying their taxes, seeing the leader of the Workers' Party of Canada with a $2,000, you know, baby, which is fine if it's his own money. But then when it's his wife traded it for favorable mention of it's bad. This is, you can do 100 things that are wrong. You can blow, as we've seen in the government, 100 billion and nobody cares. But when you buy a well, you don't buy it. When you get a $2,000 baby carriage or whatever the heck it is, and you didn't pay for it, and you talked about what a great carriage it was, people get that. That's going to hurt them.
Oh, and by the way, the violation for any type of ethics violation in this regard is $500. Log on to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think. Log on to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.